You are listening to Words with a Mad Coach. I am Mad Coach. I am Mad Coach. I am. I am Mad Coach. I am Mad Coach. I am. You are listening to Words with a Mad Coach.
All right, Mad World, we're going to take a look at some key points that I thought that helped Derek Brunson win in his latest fight, but they don't have anything to do with that fight specifically. If you look at the fight as a whole, he pretty much fought that fight the way Kamaru Usman fought against Masvidal. Presumably, you could say going in that Masvidal was the greater knockout artist at range, and in this particular case you could say that about Shabazian. And Derek took the same approach, put him up against the cage, got in his chest, shortened the distance, maximized his wrestling background. But I don't think that's the main reason why he won. I think you have to go back and look at some previous performances and look at some changes that he's made over his career. There is one factor, but it's about Shabazian. If you look at Derek, he has 12 wins in the UFC, and 8 are by, some type of finish, and they were in the first round. So that tells you that he's generating a lot of energy, a lot of force early on. When the opportunity is there, boom, he's taking somebody out. So this was kind of the first time that we saw him go into a third round fight, where he really finished someone. And for me, that is a sign of late power. And that's one of those changes I'm talking about in his career, by him being able to relax more, save some of that energy. Now he's starting to develop his true striking skill and ability and attributes that go along with that. And now he's able to strike for a longer period of time effectively. Just like they say the wrestler controls, the direction of the fight because of the takedown. Well, power punchers control the direction of the fight also because of their ability to knock you out. You've seen this change within Derek now, especially in the last 3 fights where he's gone the distance in 2 of those fights. He's starting to accept the fact that, hey, I've got this power. It's always going to be there. It's okay for me to get some rounds in. And against, I think it was Theodore and Ian Einish, he didn't have to worry too much about those guys. They really didn't produce a lot of knockouts or a lot of finishes in the UFC. And that's something that you will see, that guys will fight on a different circuit, a regional circuit or whatever, and they will have, a good number of finishes. But when they get to the UFC, you notice that ratio starts to change because the competition is better. There are certain guys like Masvidal and Derek Brunson and Machida and Uriah Hall, because I'm going to talk about them. They're guys who start picking it up. Now, some of these guys, they do, as they pick up their ability to finish, they also get finished. And that's another discussion for a later time. These guys who have that power, they may lack the fight IQ, like the ability or just the experience to go into other areas of fighting that allow them to control the fight even more so. And that's why they end up getting themselves in trouble. They depend on this one thing. And I think that's what you're seeing different about Derek Brunson now. He's no longer depending on that one thing. I mean, going into this fight, he had 100% takedown defense, but he rarely utilized his own takedown skills and abilities. Look at the way that fight went. I think maybe somebody whispered in his ear and said, hey, it's time for you to start doing that. And I think he's probably, like I said, the fight with Heinisch and Theodoro, I think he took some time to learn how to fight in those fights. I think he said, you know what, these guys really can't hurt me, so it's absolutely okay if I go in here and actually just try to win rounds. And I think he's still learning that part, because you saw in this first round, you could debate that Shabazian won the round. If you look at the last 2 fights with Heinisch and Theodoro, he won the last 2 rounds, I believe it was, against Einish, but he lost the first one. And against Theodoru, it was kind of a split where one judge had all 3 rounds for Brunson, and the other 2 judges had 2 rounds for Brunson. I think he's actually doing that deliberately. Now, we could go back further and say he's always had this habit, but I think he's trying to learn how to win the rounds. And if he's going to get to that 5-round level, that championship level, he's got to do that now. He's got to learn how to get over the nerves, maybe lose 1 round, but know how to take control and win the other 4. So I think that's what he's doing. I think that's what he's practicing. And I think that's why Shabazian being in this fight, it led to his downfall, because Derek Brunson is on another level in terms of where his focus is. It had nothing to do with Shabazian per se. It wasn't about Derek Brunson taking down the new shooting star, the new super guy, or the guy that's going to get behind the push machine. I think Derek is really focused on loftier goals. And with him being 36 and he realizing that, time is slipping by, he's got to make that run now, at least get into the conversation, be the guy who picks up a short notice fight the way Masvidal did, or just flat out beat the next 2 or 3 top contenders, and then boom, get his championship fight against whoever's the champion at the time, Adesanya or Costa. The thing that I saw the most is what changed this fight with Brunson against Shabazian. Shabazian has KOs in the UFC. I think he only has 1 fight that went to the decision. But when you look at his other fights, the one thing that was missing was a threat level. In other words, he could threaten those guys because he can knock people out. I mean, he has shown it in his regional experience. I think he only had 1 fight that went the distance there. And so he had the ability to knock people out before he got to the UFC, and then he continued on that path. But you have to look at the competition. And none of the guys that he KO'd or finished had more than 1 or 2 finishes in the UFC. And I'm always going to reference the finishing rate in the UFC versus the local, because it's a higher level competition. When he fought against this higher level of competition, he finished a lot of guys, but they themselves didn't have a lot of KO or finish ability to throw back at Shabazian. And that was the difference in what Brunson had in his favor, is that not only did he have the power to finish, but he had seen finishing effectiveness of other fighters who have just as many knockouts or just as much finishing ability as he does. 2 of those guys actually 3 of those guys I'm thinking about are Machida and Uriah Hall and Ed Herman. They were those 3 guys that Brunson beat, all had serious finishing ability. And when you look at what's next for Shabazian, I would recommend they not put him in with somebody like a Ed Herman, who is probably looking for a fight right now. He's not a good bounce back fight for Shabazian. Matter of fact, he would fight Shabazian the same way Derek would fight. Derek and Eric Herman are very similar in a lot of ways. So that just wouldn't be a good bounce back fight. You probably give him somebody that doesn't have that finishing ability and more or less wants to dive in for a takedown when they're threatened. So that was really the big thing that I saw why Derek won this particular fight, was that he could throw the threat and not be afraid of the threat, where Shabazian hadn't really been tested yet because he hadn't really faced anybody with that finishing ability inside of the UFC. And that's probably the main reason why he won the fight. But again, that mental focus, knowing where he's going, he was thinking way beyond this fight. Let me put it another way. He was focused on the fight, but he was training way beyond this fight. Everything that he's been doing looks like he's progressing toward a bigger goal. And that's a good strategy to build your game up as you progress toward seeing, the higher level competition. You want to make sure you're getting those looks before you get to the champion. Hey, look, I'm Coach Sess, and you've had words with the Mad Coach.